All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for real people, just like you right there, and just like me here. All right, so let's talk about Brian Howe again. Brian Howe did not get his due for his work in Bad Company. Just it didn't. Later on, it was not recognized, and certainly it left a bitter taste in his mouth. And now he's gone, and now people are worrying about if Paul Rogers is okay. And it's yes, he's fine. He posted a video telling us that he's fine and no worries, and yet no mention of Brian Howe. Brian Howe was a brilliant vocalist who, by the way, even in his later years, you can, again, go look up the tune called Hot Tin Roof that he did a couple of years back, which showed that vocally he sounded quite a bit like he did in his 30s, and he was in his 60s. He had a heart attack a couple of years ago, took it easy. Apparently he broke some ribs in a car crash a couple days before the cardiac arrest, which unfortunately took his life. So, there are a number of different circumstances that led up to this, unfortunately. And it's tragic and sad. And those of us who lived through the 1980s into the 90s understand that good music doesn't change because, the programmers, this is another thing that irritates me. My old radio station, the DJ had to go on to break format in order to play Holy Water by Bad Company because it's been focus tested into oblivion, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Number one track on mainstream rock stations. See, I'm thinking that the conventional wisdom is it wasn't a top 40 hit. It was just a rock radio hit, even though it was a ginormous rock radio hit. The funny thing is the song How About That from the next album spent 6 weeks at number one on mainstream rock stations. And that was almost a last gasp for melodic rock music. In 1992, it spends 6 weeks, defies logic at the time where it's Nirvana and Pearl Jam all the time, and then this arena rock group with Brian Howe still holding on to their 1988 ambitions, going back to Dangerous Age. 4 years later, they create yet another album, basically 3 in that trilogy, and it worked, at least for 6 weeks. It worked at number one, which is unheard of. It's bizarre. So I'm just a little bit, again, all these different things going through my mind that people couldn't handle to hear Holy Water yesterday, breaking format, because we can't interrupt our large servings of this crap that continues to permeate the airwaves pretty much nonstop, interrupted by the most safe and secure songs by Led Zeppelin and, certain focused Ozzy Osbourne, most of it based on image. Well, this image is tough enough. This is raunchy enough, so we can keep it, or whatever it is, where you have to think through the image of the band. Maybe you think through what the song sounds like. Is this the cream of the crop? Because we really don't want to lose anybody. Man, remember the freeform days? My friend Chris and I were talking about that when he was on the show here. Freeform music where a DJ could get up there and just knock it out of the park and mix tunes that went together well. Like if a song had a certain cold ending, you could play a song with a certain quick start right after that, and you have a really good mix, or a slow fade out that fades, and then you have something that fades up and in. I mean, none of that stuff is done anymore because everything is it's computer generated crap. I mean, Tom Petty's last DJ, he's in Mexico somewhere. If you tilt the radio just right, you might be able to hear what he's talking about. It's really sad. The Brian Howe era represented kind of like the last gasp for melodic rock music in general. And this idea that you can't even still play any holy water, you can't play that. No smoke without a fire, you can't play that. If you needed somebody, which was, by the way, a top 40 crossover song, nope, it's not on the radio. You won't hear it. Not anywhere. Classic rock doesn't play it because he's not, again, and this is obviously the Paul Rodgers bias. Well, if we're gonna play Bad Company, we got to pretend this Bad Company over here didn't exist. Okay, this album over here didn't sell 1 million copies. Really weird behavior. And unfortunately, and I do mean unfortunately, this exposes Brian leaving planet Earth, kind of exposes what the music industry has become, and even those who claim to be historical and classic rock oriented and trying to give listeners a fair amount of nostalgia when they tune in. They're not doing any of their due diligence. They're not even trying. And as a music guy, as somebody who was in radio broadcasting, I'll continue to soapbox this stuff all day long because we deserve better than the focus-tested nonsense. And yeah, people can handle it. People can handle Brian Howe. All right, they can handle that he was the singer and then there was this new Bad Company. And you can debate if they should have kept the name or they should have called it something else. When I heard the first album, the Fame and Fortune album, I thought it was a Foreigner album. And it was Mick Jones producing. At the time, I didn't know anything about this stuff. And I said, hey, looks like Foreigner has become Bad Company or vice versa. And I didn't necessarily not like the music. But there was a notable change in direction and so forth. And, you go from Paul Rodgers, you go from the bluesy soul guy to arena rock. And the 80s were kind of all about arena rock. So it wasn't stupid. So anyway, Brian Howe didn't get his due. And at the end, he didn't really, he was still obviously bitter. And I think he was just looking, kind of like Dennis DeYoung is looking like for one more Styx tour. I think Brian was looking for somebody to just say, hey, good job. Good job for those few years. You were really good. And you kept this band going. And obviously you sold a lot of records. I know, was it Mick or one of those guys from the Simon says, yeah, we had a minor hit in 1990. Well, it was a pretty big hit. There are a lot of groups that would like to have a platinum selling album. And you had a platinum selling album in 1990. So that's more than just a little minor hit. You had a top 40 song, and you had a number of rock radio songs. At the top of that list was a tune called Holy Water. But people forget. Boys Cry Tough. Anyone remember that song? Probably not. That song was huge for a few weeks on rock stations. It had a story in it too, where the victim in the song doesn't make it. He gets offed by somebody else. So, and it's a classic storyteller thing, and maybe a bit derivative of Shooting Star, but so what? It was a good song. So anyway, I'm Dave, and this is my channel. Thank you for watching. And I'm going to get off the soapbox. Brian Howe definitely needs to be honored. And even if it's posthumously, it stinks that it would have to be that way. But he was a great singer, and he could still sing. He still had the pipes. And I haven't heard him, sing recently, but I know think he did a couple of gigs, and I should have went to one of them. I had the opportunity to go to one of them, and I didn't do it. But you can check out Hot Tin Roof. You can check out some of the more recent concert footage where he shows up and sings, and it'll knock your socks off because he sounds like it's 1988. All right, I'm done. See you soon. Thanks for tuning in.